Hey everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and this is a different kind of episode because this episode originally appeared on John Hanley's channel, Living the Music. I was guesting on John's channel to talk about my Sammy Hagar book, Red on Black, The Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar, but it turned into more of a discussion about Sammy's overall career and pointing out some career highlights for the Red Rocker, both solo and in bands. And John was kind enough to let me use it here. So I thought, yeah, let's have this discussion so that everybody that follows my channel can see it.
Welcome to Living the Music. We're here to talk about Sammy Hagar today, the one and only Red Rocker. We have Tim Derling with us, who has written this fantastic book. There you go, Red on Black, the listener's guide to Sammy Hagar. And this came out last year, Tim?
Been out a couple years now, John.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, like I say, this is a fantastic read. I think both for Sammy Hagar fans and just let's say you're curious, like you've heard of this guy and you want to get into it and find out what are the better albums and so forth. So I really enjoyed it. I like that Tim goes into really nice detail. He's able to tell you various references of like this song is comes from a ZZ Top song or or whoever. I don't know where you get all this. I mean, it's an incredible music knowledge, but he's able to give you that with some of Sammy's stuff, and where some of the song ideas came from, who's playing on every album. And also the nice thing is if you know anything about Sammy, he's had a lot of different configurations he's been involved in. And Tim, I believe, has them all in here, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
haven't let any slip through the cracks.
I don't think so. See, the book concentrates on his solo career, but yeah, there's a section for Montrose, there's a section for Van Halen, there's a section for Chickenfoot. I couldn't ignore those, but it mainly concentrates on the albums that have his name on them because I don't think there's been another book that's just talked about his solo career.
Right. Yeah. No, not that I know of. We have his memoir, and even he doesn't talk that much about his solo career in there. From what I recall, what did he call his?
Red,
Just read, yeah,
my uncensored life in rock. Yeah, it's a good read, but
yeah,
it's about his life and his overall career, and it's not for facts. Like this one is for people that maybe they've got a couple of the Van Halen albums he's on, maybe they've got Three Lock Box or a couple of his solo albums, but he's got so many. Some of them are pretty obscure, so this is a place to know what's out there, what songs are on each one, and you kind of get an idea through my reviews of them what kind of album you're in for.
yeah, absolutely. And we're both huge fans of Sammy. We came to him at various times. I think I came on board with the All Night Long album way
Great
back.
album.
I think my mom brought it home one day. She was in the record store and she's like, "Who is that? I think my kids are like that." And she brought that home. We're like, "Oh yeah, mom, that was a good buy on that." So yeah, that goes back to what, like 78 or something like
78.
that.
Yeah, it's a great live album too. Fantastic.
Absolutely, absolutely. When did you first get involved with Sammy?
Well, so I was born in 74. So my first exposure to Sammy was when I heard Why Can't This Be Love on the radio. And I was like, who's singing that? Who's singing that song? That's fantastic.
Yeah,
That guy could sing the phone book and I'd like it. You know what I mean? It was the
yeah.
voice. And so the DJ came on after that and said, "Oh, that's a brand new one from Van Halen." And I thought, "Oh, that's Van Halen." Now, I knew who Van Halen was. I'd seen all the 1984 videos and I knew who Dave was and I knew they were changing singers. But I mean, I was 10, 11 years old. My musical knowledge was very limited. But I wanted to know more. So yeah, I got on board not just with Sammy, but with Van Halen when 5150 came out. And then, I went back with Van Halen and then I went back with eventually tried to find all of Sammy's albums, which were not easy to find, especially pre-internet.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So I grew up in the Bay Area. So Sammy was like one of our
Oh yeah.
guys, going to high
Abs-
school and stuff. And like, he was just so prominent in the Bay Area. We had a huge love affair with Sammy going way back. And when we heard he was in Van Halen, it was like, whoa, this is mind-boggling news. What are you talking about? And then you're wondering, God, what are they going to sound like? And then they come out with that single, and you're like, oh, wow. I mean, that's like, it's you still go back to the Sammy albums, but when I heard that, it's like, wow, that's the best I've ever heard Sammy in a sense. Like that's a tremendous song
yeah.
that they pulled together to debut the Van
Oh yeah.
Hagar era.
Yeah. I think that that combination, I think that I think they brought the best out of each other. I really do. I remember and I was in line, after from then on, like OU 812 from Lawful Carnal Knowledge, I was waiting for those new albums to come out. And boy, I was bummed when that fell apart in '96. But I kind of looked at it as, tried to look at the bright side and think, well, I'll have more albums to buy. But as it turns out, the most prolific guy in that Van Halen camp by a mile was Sammy. I mean, for all of the Van Halen, and I don't want to get into the drama stuff, but all the Van Halen accusations about how Sammy didn't want to work, Sammy was very prolific. He just kept putting out the records. It wasn't him that wasn't, eager to get out there and get on the road, but still make new music. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, I think that as much as I'm a fan of a lot of Sammy's solo albums, I've always thought that he works best in the confines of an established group because I think that the first Montrose album, which I went back and discovered, is amazing. I think all the Van Halen albums are amazing, and I was really disappointed that Chickenfoot didn't continue because I really thought that was its own thing. Even though it had Sammy and Mike from Van Halen, it didn't sound like Van Halen. It was its own thing. So I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but yeah, that was but what a perfect first taste to give everybody. And I mean, obviously it worked. That song went all the way to number 3 on the pop charts. I mean, it was and I think people have to realize whether you like Sammy and Van Halen or not, you have to look at the cold hard facts of the music business and record sales. Most bands don't survive losing a lead singer. The sound of the band, the voice of the band, the face of the band, and David Lee Roth wasn't just any front man. He was one of a kind. And so most bands they lose their singer and that's it. You're gone. You're done. You're playing the smaller circuit. Van Halen got a whole second act with Sammy and multi-platinum albums, all number one albums. It's it's easier to come up with examples of when it didn't work than when it did. I mean, the two biggest examples that come to my mind are Van Halen and AC/DC. And obviously, in AC/DC's case, it was unavoidable.
Yeah, well, yeah, Black Sabbath too with Dio.
Oh, yeah,
They,
Black Sabbath with Dio, they did. Yeah, they couldn't keep it going, but you're right. Um, it's very rare, though. Motley Crue couldn't do it.
yeah,
I mean,
Foreigner. Yeah.
Foreigner, Journey. I mean, or you're forced to get people that sound like your singer that left. Van Halen was able to get in a singer who sounded nothing like his predecessor, wrote nothing like his predecessor, and in a lot of ways, they became a brand new band, and yet it was still thriving. It was still successful.
Yeah, and they weren't able, as referenced earlier, they weren't able to replicate that with the guy that came after him. And not to go too far into that, but Gary Sharon's a fine singer.
I love Gary. I love
Yeah,
Extreme. I think I remember thinking that, boy, that's an interesting choice that they made. And I know why they made it. It was the same management and stuff. But I always thought that Gary would have been better suited um, for Queen.
mm,
When Roger Taylor and Brian May, Paul Rogers is fantastic, but I did not like that album that Queen and Paul Rogers did. I didn't like
yeah,
that album at all.
yeah, yeah,
I think Gary would have fit that situation far better than he fit Van Halen. But hey,
yeah.
it was like good tastes that don't taste good together. That's kind of what it was like. But yeah, I
It's such a good
mean,
point about how, it either it either works or it doesn't, and it's sometimes as fans we can kind of see it coming, uh like like you say, Gary is a fantastic singer, but it just didn't work there, and he didn't quite have the confidence or the um charisma, I guess, to stand up to Eddie, or maybe there was just nobody that could stand up to him at that time. He was just determined to do it his way. I don't
yeah,
know.
there was, there was a tremendous amount of pressure on Gary, and I can hear it on some songs on that Van Halen 3 record where it almost sounds like they're trying to get him to sing like Sammy sang, some of the ad libs and stuff, which was not his natural style. And also, I mean, here's Gary telling he's been told he's got the job. Well, now there they are with David Lee Roth on the MTV Awards. Like, what's going on here? Very strange situation. So I think it
Yeah.
was one of those cases where he never really knew where he stood. Although I've been told by more than a few people, there is a second record of that lineup that never came out in like an unmixed form. And from what I've heard, that it's way better than the first one. And Gary's even said he wishes that they had gone on tour first before they went into write. And there's another point about, and this happened in the 80s. You had Asia and you had GTR, and then the turn of the 90s, you had Damn Yankees. You had these super groups, right? Where the record labels would like assemble these guys from other all kinds of different bands. But just because you've got four or five talented musicians and songwriters together doesn't mean they're going to gel. And I think that's really the case with Gary and Van Halen. It was oil and water. The parts were great, but they didn't come up with something that was better. Whereas, with Sammy, I think he ascended with Van Halen. He started writing better lyrics. He was singing like he'd never sung before. And the band's musicianship was, I mean, obviously it would only get better that many years in the business, but it's rare. It's rare for it to click like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, so get Tim and I talking about these things. We can go down to various rabbit holes. But listen, we're going to take a look at the highlights of Sammy's career. Now, different fans might pick out different albums, of course, depending on your taste. We've landed on five. We I was thinking about one of them. We might debate it a little bit, but we've landed on five albums that we think are pretty representative of the highlights of Sammy's career. We're talking about a very long career, by the way. And look, we would probably say every album has something to offer. Even great songs on I would say most of the albums, if not all. But many of them are inconsistent, and there's even a couple here we might talk about that they don't quite make it 10 out of 10. Maybe, I don't know. We'll talk about it just because you end up with some middling songs that aren't quite up
It's
to
hard.
snuff. But
It's hard to knock it out of the park every time.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But starting with our first one, I think we would both agree they did pretty much knock it out of the park. So
Yeah.
we're going to go with the first Montrose album from 1973. If you're into classic rock at all, you know this album. It is known as one of the greatest American hard rock albums of all time, if not one of the greatest hard rock albums of all time, certainly from the 70s. It was never really a big hit in its time. It didn't have any singles, really. It didn't make the top 40, but it has had kind of a slow burn over the years. It has reached platinum status in America. And as I think you've talked about previously, it would probably be at least double platinum. It's just they don't recount these things for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
so this goes back, as I say, to 1973. This was Sammy's first album anyway. By the way, Tim's got some really interesting details in here. Even for major Sammy heads, you're going to learn some stuff. So like Tim mentions that Sammy put out a single before before
Yeah.
the Montrose album.
Yeah.
I did not know that, sir.
Yeah.
So I got to find that on YouTube one of these days. But this was his first recorded album, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, first major label, first, and my history with that album is fun because so like I said, I got into the band, or I got into, I was aware of Sammy when 50 came out. And so um and I write about this in the book. I found this cassette tape, and I call it a truck stop tape. These are the types of things that you would see in department stores, and where they were put out by record labels, but they weren't actual albums. They were just kind of thrown together. And Sammy, they threw this one out called Red Hot. And all it is a bunch of songs from, you already mentioned, All Night Long. So it's got some songs from that, and then it's got some songs from Live 1980. So the two albums he did for Capitol, the two live albums he did for Capitol Records, this was just a mishmash of those songs with no information as to where they came from or anything. And on that cassette, I heard songs like Red and Turn Up the Music and the 20th Century Man. Well, I was really confused to hear I've Done Everything for You, because I'm like, why is he doing a Rick Springfield song? Like I said, no credits, no nothing, right? But I did know that song. But on that also appeared Bad Motor Scooter and Space Station Number 5. Now, I didn't know those weren't just, I didn't know how many albums Sammy had. I knew he had a lot, but you just didn't see them in my area in the easternmost part of Canada. Um, Especially when I was a kid and couldn't really get to any used record stores, didn't even know where they were. But the following year, I remember getting a Hit Parader magazine that came out that was called the 100 Greatest Heavy Metal Albums of All Time. Now, I use the term heavy metal very loosely. Not all, most of the albums there really weren't heavy metal, but one of them somewhere in there towards the bottom half was this album called Montrose by the band of the same name. And I flipping through the magazine, and I really didn't give it a second look. It had a picture of Ronnie Montrose with a guitar that looked like a gun, and he had like a gun sight on it. So that didn't really click for me. But then I read the article, and it said the first bellows of a young singer named Sammy Hagar, songs like Bad Motor Scooter and Space Station Number 5. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, so that's where these songs come from. I'll have to be on the lookout for that. And I eventually found that cassette that summer in 1989, and it became one of my all-time favorite albums. I couldn't, first of all, I could not believe how good it sounded. I could not believe how high fidelity it was for an album that old. Like at the time I bought that album, that was the oldest album in my collection. It's the first time I think, except maybe for the first Rush album, but it was the first time I bought an album older than I was, you know. Um, and I didn't know Ted Templeman produced it either, because like there was no credits on the cassette. That would have made more sense to me, but I didn't know that. But when I did find that, I'm like, well, no wonder it sounds so good. But Rock the Nation, Rock Candy, Make It Last, just killer songs. And it's like, well, yeah, no wonder they were talking about this album, how good it was. And so, that was just another part of the education for me and learning about that. I think it's a fantastic album. I think that it's a great example of a sleeper hit because, yeah, it did not chart very high when it first came out. It took 4 years to certify gold in the US. So it just kept steadily, steadily, steadily selling. All sorts of people have covered songs from it. It was like one of those albums for those people in the know. And it makes sense that the year that Sammy joins Van Halen and he sort of has that higher profile, that they finally recertify the album platinum. That kind of makes sense to me. But yeah, no hit singles off it. That's one of the things that if you read Ted Templeman's autobiography, he says he should have pushed to have a single on it. He said that's one thing that album was missing, was pretty heavy. I mean, it was a pretty heavy album. I could not imagine any of those songs sharing the airspace, or getting on AM radio at the time. It was a really hard rocking album. And yeah, you're right, there was something very American about it. It didn't sound like Black Sabbath, it didn't sound like Deep Purple. There was no sort of dour goth, it was a California album, but it was loud and it rocked really, really hard. And the world was introduced to one of the, I think, one of the greatest vocalists of all time. And already he sounded like himself. He sounded like the Sammy we would come to know.
Yeah, so prior to this, we know from Sammy's autobiography that he had been gigging a lot and he's had a lot of experience, and he comes as a songwriter to this
Yeah.
too, a fully formed songwriter in a sense. Now, he says that Ronnie, the way he plays guitar, he would make his songs sound better, and probably he would just like add different modulations and stuff to really pump up the excellence of the songs. But Sammy's credited with two soul writing songs on here. What is it? Make It Last and Bad
And
Motor Scooter.
yeah, yeah, those are solely his songs. And I think that, yeah, that's what got him the job. And and when you think about it, and that's been said many, many times, but if you look at the parallels, so here's this self-titled album, groups named after their guitar player. Ted Templeman is producing, Warner Brothers Records. It's the template for what would become that debut Van Halen album 5 years later. It's pretty amazing. And then Sammy was right there in the thick of it. So much so that Van Halen with Dave covered. I mean, I know they did Make It Last, and I think they did Rock Candy in the club. So that's how influential that album was. So I mean, young Eddie was listening, and
Well,
it was just it's just crazy how they were fated to come together eventually.
yeah, and as I'm sure you know, it turns out that Ted was talking to Eddie about bringing Sammy in,
Yeah, there was
but
some discussion. Yeah, because yeah, and
early on in
that's
Van Halen.
yeah, that was a that's a great point. And in that excellent Ted Templeman autobiography, which was authored by my buddy Greg Renoff, who also wrote the excellent Van Halen Rising, and was kind enough to write the foreword to my Sammy book. Greg's like the authority on all things Van Halen, but yeah, I mean, Ted was having a hard time getting good vocals out of Dave, and he was thinking, yeah, maybe this isn't going to work with him. Now, as big a fan of Sammy as I am, and as big a fan of Van Halen with Sammy as I am, I'm really glad it happened the way that it did, because Van Halen wouldn't have been Van Halen without Dave, without his unique view on life, his lyrics and the way he would deliver them, and him as a frontman pushed that band out to the world. Yes, the excellence of Eddie was there on guitar, but how many guitar freaks are there that buy 10 million copies of an album? You got to have songs, and you got to have a voice to those songs. So I think it worked out just the way it did. But yeah, it would have been a weird tear in the fabric of rock and roll history if it
Yeah.
had happened that time. It would almost be like going back a couple years before that when Sammy put his first album out on Capitol Records, one song, because he did a lot of outside songs. They pushed a lot of outside songs on him. They wanted him to do Night Moves by Bob
Mm,
Seger.
mm,
You imagine what would have happened if that had become a hit with Sammy singing it, not Bob's. Like, it's just,
yeah.
things happened the way they were supposed to, I think.
Yeah, and Ted admits that too, that
Yeah.
he made the right choice staying with Dave, no doubt about it. So yeah, I mean, we could talk for days about this. I'll just say, when I think about Sammy's career and all the tremendous songs he's associated with, whether as a sole writer or co-writer, I still think, Tim, I'm not saying it's the greatest ever, but I am saying he never topped Rock Candy as a composition and as a record. Yeah, why can't this be love? Is freaking great. It's not better than Rock Candy, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
Why Can't This Be Love is one of my all-time favorite songs by anybody. But Rock Candy is a titan of a song. It's got a great groove. It's got a great riff. And Sammy sings it with such attitude. Yeah, I mean it's top tier Sammy for sure. And when Sammy himself, I mean, he has never not performed songs from that album in his solo set. I mean, he always did songs from that album, even if it was just one song, even if it was just Bad Motor Scooter. So he's always given credit to that album. And the only thing I would say is that it's if that band, another thing that didn't work the way that, maybe people might have thought it should have. But if that album had become a hit and sold well in its time. I don't think that Ronnie Montrose would have hit that panic button, which is why Paper Money is such a confusing sounding album, is nowhere near as good as the first album, nowhere near as powerful or as well produced or anything, because the first album flopped. So obviously, oh, okay, well, people don't want to hear that sound. They want to hear something else. But if Montrose the band had put out 3 or 4 albums that were as good as that first album, I think that they would have been every bit as big as a band like Aerosmith. I mean, I think they would have been one of the biggest American hard rock bands of all time, but just didn't work out that way. So now it's almost like a footnote. Oh yeah, he used to be in a band called Montrose.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think Sammy even says that in his book. They really should have been the next Aerosmith, or equivalent, or even above them. One footnote on that, though, people talk about that shift from Montrose, the debut, to Paper Money, and how it's more eclectic, and there's a couple bangers on there, but not nearly in the same spirit as the first album. But then Sammy, in his Capitol years, he goes eclectic too. It's not like he's
Yep.
like he's not trying to capture the power of this. It's like, what the hell is he trying to do?
Yeah,
It's like,
it's very strange, John. It's very strange. So Paper Money, I mean, my history with that album is it took me like I got the first one in the first Montrose in 1989, and it wasn't until the end of 91, and I had to send away for it from this mail order place in Connecticut that I used to order stuff, cassettes and CDs from, before I even heard it. I never saw it in stores. See the first album quite a lot, really. Especially in the the 7.99, 8.99 cassettes, not the markdown ones, but the mid-tier ones, the older ones. Never saw Paper Money, and I remember getting it and putting it on, and just as soon as it starts, first song Underground, it sounds like a 74 record. Whereas the first Montrose album could have come out in 83 and you wouldn't bat an eye. It sounds so good. It's very
yeah,
muddy and sludgy, and it just doesn't sound as good. Even though Ted
yeah,
Templeman's still there, you've got Ronnie in on the production. So
right,
it's not, the drums don't hit as hard. It's almost the same band. The only thing that changed was it's not Bill Church anymore. It's Alan Fitzgerald, who would later join Night Ranger, which is another band I wrote a book about. But and all those guys, except for Ronnie, ended up in Sammy's solo band at one time or
right,
another. Like it's the only
right,
time I can think of an example where you had a guy in a band and then you had his replacement also in the same band.
yeah,
But anyway, because Fitz also played keyboards. But
yeah,
um, yeah, I've Got the Fire is generally regarded as the one song on Paper Money that would stand toe to toe with any of the songs in the first album. It is a great song. I would have loved to have heard it with the production sound on that first
yeah.
album. I think it would have been even better. It's one of Ronnie's best solos. The title song is pretty good too, and there's a couple others, but
Space Age Sacrifice, I
yeah,
think,
that's a good
is
one
really
too. And
good.
I think all of those songs would benefit from that better production. But I mean, like Underground is a cover. They do Connection by the Rolling Stones. There's an instrumental.
Yeah,
Ronnie
right,
Montrose sings a song.
right,
Like
right,
as Sammy was saying, he didn't want me in the band. He didn't
right.
want me writing. So, but and again, this goes back to if the first Montrose album had been really successful, and Sammy had signed with Warner Brothers as a solo artist, I think maybe he would have kind of gotten to the more hard rock sound earlier. But Capitol signed him, which I guess was the best offer going. And they didn't, I've thought this for years, they had no idea what to do with him. Because I think they almost signed him as a sort of an all around singer, songwriter, entertainer. Because when you listen to those early Capitol albums, and I talk about this at length in the book, there's yacht rock on there.
Yeah,
There's psychedelic. There's
yeah,
tons of covers. He's covering Van Morrison. He's covering Bob Welch. He's covering Donovan. He's covering Patti Smith. Doesn't make any sense because when he would write a couple of songs, they'd be the rockers on the album, like Urban Gorilla or Reckless, or some of his better songs from that period. Also, the productions are terrible on those albums. They're really low budget sounding, not nearly as good as something that Ted Templeman would do. So that's why I've said this, and you already mentioned it. But if somebody wants to get into Sammy's Capitol stuff, I would start them off with All Night Long. I'm like, you want to hear him at his best at that period. Those songs come alive on live album. That's the
Yeah,
one. That's the one to get right there because if you know the Montrose album, you'll recognize some of the songs. But he just those songs come to life, whether it's bad, Turn Up the Music or Red or Rock and Roll Weekend or any of those. I mean, they're just simple rock and roll songs, but they come alive on that live album. They've really, and he's singing them like they're stadium anthems, even though he was only popular in pockets, like they recorded that
right.
album San Antonio because he was big there, but he couldn't go on an American tour and do the same like he always did. He always said the East Coast was a rough spot for him until he joined Van Halen. So it's really interesting how eclectic those albums are. And yeah, as you said, at the end of each chapter on each album, if there are any songs which were covers, I talk about where the covers came from. And if anybody covered songs from his albums, I talk about who covered those. Like, for example, like Sammy's the only guy that I know of who can say that he's had his songs covered by Megadeth and Bette Midler. I mean, that
That's
pretty
a
much
pretty
runs the gamut right there.
pretty
Bette
big
Midler,
spectrum.
Bette Midler did two of Sammy's songs. She did "Keep On Rockin'." That's on the Rose soundtrack, which was probably made Sammy some money because that was a successful album. And she did the song "Red," which doesn't even make any sense because that's so very
Yeah,
specific to Sammy's persona as the Red Rocker. But it's just weird, and you read about like, how did he's more than proven at this point that he was capable of writing good songs, and yet they insisted on foisting all of these, especially on 9 on a 10 scale, the first one. Like that's really
yeah,
heavy on covers. It's about half and
yeah,
half.
yeah, yeah. So like, yeah, great beginning. He doesn't really try to emulate this kind of power again until I would say 5150. Uh, and as far as the Capitol years goes, I am partial to this musical chairs album. I kind of dig the eclecticism of it. He's got Denny Carmassi on here, so
Yep.
that's cool. And there's a lot of catchy tunes on this.
Oh yeah, I can find things to like on all of those albums, but I totally understand why they weren't big albums.
Right, right. And
I
and
can,
and I
I
think
get it.
I think we have to also, who are we? We're just guys talking about this stuff. He's the talent, but still, just looking at it from a critique point of view, I think during those years, his songwriting wasn't always at the top of his game. I mean, he wasn't writing another Bad Motor Scooter, really. I mean,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, you're right. There aren't really many what I would call Sammy standards on these
Mhm.
albums. I think that he came up with a few really, really good ones. Like, I mean, you can always count on Sam to write about a car. So he's got Trans Am. That's a great. Street Machine's a pretty good album. That's a pretty rocking album, and so is Danger Zone. So
Yeah, I like those.
the last two for Capitol, it kind of started to point the way towards the sound that would, sell him a lot more records. But yeah, it's cruising and boozing. Like he's not, is the lyrics. It's just some of the songs do sound kind of, thrown off in a hurry. Like, oh, we need some songs to get back on the road, but these rhyme. Let's go. So yeah, I think, like I said, a band situation when there's other people that are
Yeah,
really like equal to him, saying, I think you can do better than that. Whereas he was he was also a lot of under a lot of stress because like those albums weren't selling. I'm sure that one of the reasons that they sound the way they do is that the recording budgets weren't there. Uh, so he had to get an album out and get back on the road because he was probably making more money on the road. So, yeah, it wasn't the best example of him as a songwriter. There are moments, but a lot of them are just, the best you can hope for is a good rock song like Love or Money or, you know, something like that. So, it's an interesting trip to go back and listen to those albums and just look at, yeah, in between Montrose and really in between Montrose and when he signed with Geffen, it's kind of a black hole because those albums are so obscure and so unknown. And you go back and listen to them and you're like, well, I kind of get it. I kind of understand why these didn't translate to a bigger audience. And yet, him coming off that debut Montrose album, he should have had more momentum. But again, he didn't put the album out till 76. That's 3 years later. people forget. Who knows? There could be any amount of reasons why they sounded the way they did and why they sold how they did.
Yeah, yeah. So we got this as our first highlight, and he does several albums once he breaks up with the Montrose group. And like Tim says, he's a little bit in the commercial wilderness. He doesn't really he gets no hits.
Yeah,
He has no albums in the top 40, but he builds up a reputation as a live performer. And
yeah,
as we know, he's just an incredible live singer and just entertainer, really.
yeah.
And he's always been able to do that, and that's why that live album, as Tim says, is really maybe the highlight of his Capitol years. And so then he gets signed by Geffen Records, and he gets with this producer Keith Olsen.
Yeah.
Who had Keith worked with? Did he work with Fleetwood Mac or?
Yeah, Keith worked with well, he worked with he produced the Buckingham Nicks album. And it
Okay.
was through Keith Olsen that Mick Fleetwood heard a song from that, and that's how he said he wanted to get that guitar player in his band. So that's how Lindsey and Stevie ended up in Fleetwood Mac. And Keith Olsen does have a co-production credit on the 1975 the self-titled album.
Okay.
But then he went on to work with Pat Benatar, and I think that might have been his first big success, but he really hit big working with Rick Springfield in the early 80s.
Okay, right, right. So Sammy hooks up with him in what was it, 82 for Standing Hampton. And then if Wikipedia is correct, it's like it's lost in the mists of time to me, but apparently Three Lock Box came out the same year. I guess just later in the same year.
So yeah, it's interesting. My understanding, and according to Sammy himself, he was the third ever artist signed to Geffen Records because David Geffen had been with Asylum Records, but he broke away to form his own label. John Lennon was his first signing, and Donna Summer was his second. So, uh, that was John Lennon getting back into the recording business. Unfortunately, it was it was the same year he died. And then Donna Summer, Geffen lured her away from Casablanca, which was a huge blow to Casablanca Records because she and Kiss were their biggest moneymakers. And Sammy was third, and mostly due to a famous A&R guy named John David Kolodner, who had worked for Atlantic Records. I mean, he always had an ear for commercial rock. I mean, he got Foreigner signed to Atlantic, to give you an idea. So yeah, Standing Hampton has a copyright date on it of 81, but my understanding is that it didn't come out until January 6th. And so he followed it up pretty quickly with Three Lock Box, which, in my opinion, that's my favorite of Sammy's solo albums from start to finish. I think that's his best solo album. A lot of people disagree. I think Standing Hampton is quite good, but I also think Standing Hampton is very front loaded. Side one of Standing Hampton is great. Side two, it's iffy. I think Free Lock Box is the better album. Keith Olsen produced both of those. Keith Olsen would also produce the big Whitesnake albums. And sadly, he passed away. I don't know how many years it's been now. He was in that Sound City documentary, which is excellent, but I think he passed away shortly after that was done. And it was through Keith Olsen. Keith Olsen was the one that suggested Rick Springfield cover I've Done Everything for You, which became a top 10 single for Rick Springfield. I think it came out before Jesse's Girl, if I've got that right. It was a top 10 single, which was but far and away the most successful song that Sammy had ever had as a songwriter. Yeah, at that point, I think that he had songs like Plain Jane and that super mellow You Make Me Crazy that dented the Billboard Top 100. I also think his cover of, again, here's that yacht rock sitting on the dock of the bay, hit the Hot 100, but he had no top 40 singles, no top 40 albums. To give you an idea of how different the promotion was for Sammy, he became a little bit of a hero in the UK in the late 70s because the reputation that Montrose album had there. So he went over there and did quite well, and he was sort of considered an honorary member of what they called the new wave of British heavy metal, even though Sammy was never a metal performer, but he definitely rocked. But his album Danger Zone went all the way to number 12 in the UK. I think it peaked at 85 on Billboard. So something was different in terms of how he was being promoted. But yes, when Geffen came around, the budgets went up, It's his first really good sounding solo album. And I don't think that Sammy's songwriting changed all that much in his approach. I just think that somebody like John Kolodner said to him, I don't want you to just do the first 10 songs that you write. I want the very best songs that you've got. I think that's a big difference. There's no, there aren't a lot of throwaway songs, I don't think. That's the
Yeah.
major difference between the Capitol and the Geffen. And it's more focused, right? It's more focused on that sort of radio friendly rock, hard rock, AOR. And that's what he did best on the Capitol records. But again, the label had him doing all those covers and all those stylistic shifts. There's none of that here. It's like it's squarely down the middle. He's going to write in this AOR hard rock vein.
Yeah, yeah. So you could take your pick on these albums. I mean, they're almost one album in a way.
Very similar
You know,
sounding.
very
I
very
mean,
similar.
the time period is, it's almost
Yeah.
like same band.
If you took the best of each, you'd have maybe a 10 out of 10 album actually. But yeah, so the quality of the sound really goes up here with starting with Standing Hampton. And Sammy has said in interviews also that Keith Olsen helped him with his songwriting in that he apparently he told him how to, most of your songs up till now, they don't have good choruses, Sammy. You got to write a chorus, man.
Yeah.
So it's up to the listener to see if you notice any difference, but you can kind of tell he's working a little bit harder. Like I'll Fall in Love Again is really kind of the critical hit from this. It wasn't like a huge radio hit, but it did get a lot of FM airplay, I think.
Yeah.
And I think yeah,
Peaked at 43, I think. So just shy of the top 40. And right away, yeah, you're right. I'm like, okay, there's hooks.
right.
He's, there's hooks here. I like songs like Plain Jane, and obviously he wrote I've Done Everything for You. He was capable of writing hit songs, but the treatment. But I'll Fall in Love Again, that just sounds like a hit to me. So yeah, you're right. He really took that advice to heart and said, okay, let's make each one of these. He also wrote a little bit with Jim Peteritt from Survivor. That paid some dividends. So yeah, it got a lot better.
Yeah. So really, uh, I was so happy. We were all really pumped for Sammy in the Bay Area when these were out, and he was getting a lot more notoriety. I saw him on the Standing Hampton tour. I'll have you know, he was fantastic as you can imagine. And now some people would say, his most known song is probably "I Can't Drive 55," which is on VOA. But we're
Hmm.
not listing that as a career highlight because that album has some real clunkers on it, man.
That album is but half of a really good album, and it's interesting how and Can't Drive 55, I love the song. And Sammy has even said that's a career song for him, but
Yeah,
it's not his highest charting song. His highest charting solo hit is Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy from Three Lock Box, went all the way to number 13. So that was, that's his highest charting single, but it didn't have the, dare I say, novelty factor that I Can't Drive 55 had. Also didn't have a video. Video was becoming very important. That's one of the things that kind of confuses me about this period. There are no videos from Standing Hampton. And you would think that Geffen would have been right in there when MTV became a thing and was so big. There are not one video from Standing Hampton, and there's one non-live sort of concept video from Three Lock Box, and it's for the title song. It's not even for the Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy was a single,
right.
and so was Never Give Up. And neither of those songs have actual videos. They just show live clips. Those are some decisions that don't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think they got caught flat-footed on that.
Yeah.
Maybe MTV was a little bit still kind of newish, and they
Some
were,
labels were quicker to realize the
yeah.
commercial potential, I think, but Geffen, I'm surprised David Geffen didn't realize how important it would be to move into the 80s, but he certainly would after a time. I mean, look what happened when they let him do a video for the single that he put out. It was I
Right.
Can't Drive 55.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
You make a great point, though. I think if they would have had a real stylish video for I'll Fall in Love Again, that
that would have been a
could,
top, that would have pushed it over the top 40 for sure. I've
yeah.
said the same thing, and I don't want to get off track too much, but obviously one of the other books I've written is for one of my all-time favorite bands. They are a Bay Area band, Y&T. And A&M, when they signed with A&M, they had two albums out in 81 and 82, not one video. And I think that hurt them. And MTV in their earliest years was desperate for video content, so they didn't have to repeat the same videos over and over again. So they would have played them. And if Sammy had put out a video for All Fall in Love Again, or There's Only One Way to Rock, or Heavy Metal, any of those songs, even Piece of My Heart, which I don't even like, they'd have gotten play because they would have
Yeah.
had to play them. They're like, good, this will give the live REO Speedwagon clips a break. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
not getting in on the video thing early was a real head scratcher, especially for Geffen Records. I expect it from A&M, but I didn't expect it from Geffen. You'd think that they would have been real savvy and been, but I mean, they certainly they saw the error of their ways because pretty soon you had Asia, and then you had Berlin and Madness and Wang Chung. So yes, and then later White Snake in a heavier vein. So they did get on with it, but not in the earliest days.
Yeah. Not quick enough for Sammy. And
No.
yeah, like I remember when Black Tiger came out in the Bay Area, you would have thought Y&T was the
Oh,
biggest band in the whole world. I
we
mean,
have
that,
to we have to talk about Y&T on another episode because that's another episode. I get so upset when I get thinking about it because I think there's so many points in that band's career where they could have broken huge and they never did. Although I
yeah,
mean there's connections there too because there's connections with them and with Sammy and with Montrose for sure. I mean the Bay
yeah,
Area runs, the Bay Area is a relatively uh it's a community of musicians, right? So many great musicians came from there.
yeah, absolutely. I've seen them live many times. Fantastic. So he does these albums with Geffen, and then as we referenced, he joins Van Halen, and they do 4 studio albums together.
Yep.
They're all, I would say, high quality, but this one right here for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge is, to me, the best that they did. Do you agree
Me
with
too.
that?
That is not only my favorite Sammy Hagar Van Halen album, it's my favorite Van Halen album, period. I think that is an album where there is not one millisecond of wasted space. I love that album so much. I just listened to it the other day. It holds up. The production is fantastic. It's every song on it's sequenced perfectly. No, I just love it. I have the fondest memories of getting that in the summer '91 because it'd been the longest gap between Van Halen albums at that point. And all of a sudden I was in a record store and saw that album there, that logo jumped right out at me. I hadn't heard anything off of it. And I could still remember putting that on my Walkman and hearing Pound Cake, hearing that drill come in for the first time, and like, oh, here we go. And just song after song. That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, it's my favorite.
It could be the peak of his singing too. I mean, he's got a
I think
lot of great singing
I
albums,
think
but
so. Yeah, I think so. I think that, and he's a singer. Sammy's a singer that defies all known, because he can still deliver to 80% of his abilities. I mean, he still really can bring it where
yeah.
so many singers that are 20 years younger than him can't do it anymore. Um, he can still do it. But yeah, he was doing some incredible vocal stuff. Judgment Day, and like there's just there's so much great stuff. I like that they got a little experimental on this album with stuff like Pleasure Dome. I think I think it's a great example of all of that band at their best. I think the band just shines on that album. So yeah, that was Andy Johns with Ted Templeman coming in to produce Sammy's vocals, which is interesting because that makes Ted Templeman the only producer to work with Sammy on his own and in two different bands, and Van Halen with two different singers. That's pretty unique. Um, so yeah, I think it's a fantastic album. Just it's one of my favorite albums by anyone.
Yeah, and it's got some intelligent lyrics on here too.
His lyrics, yeah, his lyrics were starting to get better. His lyrics started to get better really with 5150 with songs like Dreams and Love Walks In, Best of Both Worlds. I mean, they weren't just about, women and cars and partying anymore. And on OU 812, he had stuff like, on OU 812, he had Mine All Mine, but then he had Sucker in a three piece. So, or Black and Blue, so it was, but yeah, now he's writing, The Dream Is Over and Right Now and, um,
Well, I
yeah,
remember
Judgment Day and yeah,
yeah, when I saw the title In and Out, I'm thinking, okay, that's just some like
yeah.
blatant
And
sexual
years
reference.
ago, it would have been. It would have
Yeah,
been, but it's about money,
it's really
you know.
interesting how
Yeah.
they, you got to kind of sort of pay the man, through your whole life, and even when you die, they want more
Yeah.
from you. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
First
very
live, but
cool.
been in debt from conception.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they knocked it out of the park here. They follow it up with Balance, which is hit or miss. There's some tremendous tunes on there, but didn't quite have the same magic as this. And then, as we all know, they blew it all up for whatever reasons. And Sammy goes back to solo. And Tim and I like a lot of those albums, but we're going to highlight 1013. Now, this again was not a commercial success, I don't
No.
think, by any measure, but I think it's got great energy on it, and it's got, again, really good songwriting on here. Maybe not every song, but there's some excellent tunes on here.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, I was very disappointed when Sammy wasn't in Van Halen anymore, and then I watched the MTV Awards live when they were on, and Dave was such a buffoon.
Yeah.
And I was like, really, guys, this is better than, a guy that could sing anything. And I just couldn't understand it. The one and only time I've seen Sammy or Van Halen was on the Balance tour. I saw them in,
Mm.
in 95. That's the only time I got to see them. But I was like, wow, this is bad. But, as a fan, I'm a completist. When that best of Van Halen came out, I bought it. And there were, of course, there were two new songs on it with Dave. The one of them that Can't Get This Stuff No More, I thought was all right. It didn't blow me away. Me Wise Magic, I really liked. Me Wise Magic, I thought, okay, this might not be so bad. Obviously, it wasn't to be, at least not right then. I was a huge fan of Marching to Mars. I was really, really into that album. That might be ultimately my second favorite Sammy solo album. I think there's so much emotion in that album. He was hurting. He figured he'd be retiring with Van Halen. He never ever wanted to leave that band. He always said, "This is the best band in the world. Why on earth would I want to leave a band like that just to go back to my solo career?" I think there's so many great songs on that album, and it's varied, but it's not schizophrenic like his early albums. But when I was putting this book together, every time I do a book, because they've all been album review books for the most part, I listen to the entire catalog and I listen to it pretty heavily, especially the albums that either I didn't grow up with or I got them when they first came out, kind of filed them away and didn't give them much time. And I remember being pleasantly surprised at how good 1013 sounded. So I agree. It's a great out. I remember thinking, okay, so that's a good song. That's a good song. That's a good song. I think it starts to run out of steam towards the second half, but for the most part, it's a killer album. Like it's a really good latter day Sammy album. Unfortunately, by this time, like a lot of, acts of his, what they call heritage acts, he was knocked off a major label. He was not a major label anymore. It was on Beyond Records, which whatever that is. So it didn't really stand much of a chance, but it's good. It's a really, really strong album, and I think it's the best combination of his earlier sound and also, the later stuff where he started to embrace that whole beach lifestyle thing. So yeah, great
Yeah,
album.
that beach lifestyle thing didn't work for me at all. But
No.
uh,
But for this time, the whole let's have a party atmosphere, at least he's doing it with hard rocking music, and it's really good.
yeah. So just quickly on Marching to Mars, I was underwhelmed by that. I love that. What is it? Salvation on
Oh, Salvation on Sand Hill.
Sand Hill. I
Yeah.
think that's freaking sick. I like the Montrose reunion, although I thought they could have done better. I do like it though, and Little White Lie I like, but a lot of it, the rest of it, it's I don't know. I guess it's not rocking enough for me, or I don't know what it is. It just didn't land for me. For just to touch on Red Voodoo, some good stuff in there, but then you got like I Shag You Baby. I mean, just
It's a
so
little bit.
goofy.
It starts to get a little bit. It starts to get a little bit to that hard rock Jimmy Buffett, which I cannot
Right.
stand. I don't like that at all, and eventually that would eat him alive on Living It Up. But 1013 is much better than Red Voodoo.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Red Voodoo's got has its moments, but this is one that you can listen to and go, wow, this is just a great song after a great song after a great song. I actually do remember that Let Sally Drive getting a little bit of airplay.
Yeah.
And I also remember hearing Deeper Kind of Love a couple of times, which I think could have been that could have been a Van Halen
Yeah.
song. And that could have been a hit for Van Halen too.
Yeah. I think he
I think that had I said, wow, that sounds worthy of being on a Van Halen album. And I would say that about too many of his solo songs.
yeah, I think he did Let Sally, what is it called again?
Let Sally Drive.
Let Sally
Yeah.
Drive. I think he did that on the Tonight Show, which was cool. I remember seeing that. But yeah, the first three songs on here are fantastic. Shaka Doobie into what is it? What's the second
So
one?
Let Sally
That's
Drive.
Let Sally
Yeah.
Drive, and then Serious Juju is
Yeah.
sick. Now, Tim, are you a Tool fan?
I think they're fantastic musicians. I can't get into the music.
All right. He has ripped off a riff there for Serious Juju. I always forget the song, but there's a Tool song.
I know he likes them a
Yeah,
lot, and I've seen him say, when not just talking about Tool, but also Nine Inch Nails, say that, I'm so much on the sunny side of things that when I hear dark music like that, it makes me jealous. It makes me want to write music like that. So I
yeah,
think that was his attempt.
yeah,
I've called Serious Juju like the evil right now.
yeah. That's a good way to
Not
put it.
not
Yeah.
not Serious Juju. No, the one with the piano. I think it's the message because it's got that
Okay.
piano riff. That's like the evil right now.
All right. But Juju is on, the dark side, definitely.
Yeah.
The Real Deal is kind of funny. Like I remember I went through I don't know, a week or two. I wanted to play that all the time. There was something about that. The way he does that real deep blues vocal was cool.
I see. I don't. That's more of a novelty. I don't care for that
I get
song.
you. I
To
get
me,
you.
that I really like Three in the Middle.
Hmm.
That's a fast, heavy one that reminds me of some of his earlier stuff.
I
Like
like
I
Tropic
don't.
of Capricorn a lot.
I do too, and it doesn't sound like a song I would like, but I like it. Protection's a funny one.
Mm.
Protection. It's a good song, but Protection's a funny one because the opening lyric of that song, "Lay down your arms," the way that he sings that is the exact same opening line for the Robert Plant song "Other Arms" from the Principle of Moments album, and the same phrasing,
Mm.
right down like in the same lyric. It's like, how did somebody not tap him on the shoulders? Do you want to rewrite that or maybe sing that differently? He sings it
Yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah.
It's really weird.
Interesting. Interesting.
The rest of the song doesn't sound anything like that song, but it's just that opening lyric.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out. So he continues on with his solo career, and like Tim says, he gets into this beach bum bar rum phase or whatever. I mean, the alcohol is fine. I have tasted his rum; it's pretty good. The Cabo Wabo tequila is pretty good, but uh getting into trying to be Jimmy Buffett, like semi hard rock.
His albums were getting really spotty. Like,
Yeah,
Not for Sale, I didn't care for. I still think that album feels completely unfinished. It sounds like what it was. It was a rush job to get on tour. Don't care for it. I think the best songs on there still sound like demos that need, some people disagree with me on that one.
I
But
like some tunes on there.
Living It Up is the worst. Like Living It Up, I just really don't like that album at all. And it's just a stylistic thing. I don't like that if style of music. If I wanted to listen to Toby Keith or Kenny Chesney, I'd listen to them. I don't need to be
Yeah,
hearing that in my Sammy Hagar. And
yeah,
even the one that came on after that, that Cosmic Universal Fashion, that's a weird one, man. That's about half of a good album. But what's even weirder about that one, and I know, we'll be getting into this, is that that album came and went in a second. And the next thing I'm reading, Sammy's in a new band.
yeah. Just that Cosmic Universal Fashion, that they got that tune that he did with Neil Sean. the
Oh, Peephole.
peephole,
Yeah.
dude. That as far as one song goes, that could be his one of his greatest
Oh yeah,
vocal
yeah,
performances.
that's fantastic. And I liked the song Cosmic Universal Fashion, and the video was kind of funny. It was referencing the Right Now video. He co-wrote that with someone else, but yeah, I thought it had its moments. I thought the song Loud was pretty cool. He didn't write that, but it sounds like something he would write. I think John Eddy wrote that song. But covering the Beastie Boys, and like
Yeah,
it just kind of deteriorates, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
that album came and went like just nothing.
yeah, yeah.
Never mind the fact that we had the Van Halen, the very, very brief Van Halen reunion in 2004, um, which I was excited about, but didn't last.
Yeah, I went to that show. It was, you didn't know any better in the audience necessarily, so it was
So
still a
that
fun
wasn't one
time.
of Eddie's bad shows that I've seen clips of.
I had a few wabaritas,
Yeah.
but I don't remember
But you're
thinking
also not
it's like
looking for it, right? You're not
right, right.
expecting it, right? So, yeah, it's funny because I remember that summer, it was me and my buddy Matt that helps me with my books, old friend of mine. We were going to go to a show, and we had three choices, and it was down to either Van Halen, Rush, or Alice Cooper. Um, and I said, well, I'd like to see Rush because I've never seen them. I've seen Van Halen and I've seen Alice Cooper, and that's what we ended up doing. But yeah, we almost went to see Van Halen in Toronto on that tour. But yeah, I liked It's About Time. I thought that was great. I was so excited when that came out. I'm like, this just feels right. Hopefully, there's a new album. Very quickly, that fell apart. I thought the other two songs were all right. I thought Up for Breakfast was kind of silly. That's
Yeah,
one of Sammy's dumb
I can't take it.
sex
Yeah,
lyrics. I mean, musically it's okay, but and then the learning was it. I always get them mixed up. There's learning to see, learning to live. Like he's got songs with all these similar titles because there's a song on the Chickenfoot album that's like learning to live or learning to see or. Uh, it was all right, but it wasn't high quality Van Halen. It's About Time was that was worthy of opening a full album.
I don't even think I really paid much attention to those tunes. All right, I'll check out that one tune. All right, so he's kind of in the wilderness, flopping around. Then he gets together with the one and only Joe Satriani, Michael Anthony, Chad Smith from the Chili Peppers. I don't listen to any Chili Peppers. I'm not into that kind of music, but he's a great drummer, no doubt. And they come out with Chicken Foot, dumb name in my opinion, but whatever. It's
Dumb, stupid name. I have to explain that to Chicken
right,
Foot. Like,
right.
but so they came up with a logo, they came up with a brand for it, so they kind of half sold it. But man, I was way into this album. Like, this was fantastic. Like, this is the best thing that Sammy had done in years, no question. So yeah,
Yeah,
I was all about it. I mean, this was like, and the best part is that the album went gold. I couldn't believe that. Like
yeah, that was amazing.
none of these guys in these old bands put out new albums that go gold anymore. So there was a buzz there, but they didn't capitalize on it or something. Something went
Yeah,
sideways.
yeah, right. So I saw them on this tour as well. Fantastic. They played the whole album, if I remember
Well, the
correctly.
great thing about that is that they didn't. I have the DVD from that tour, and yeah, they did the whole album, not in order. But they did the whole album. They did, I think, um, Highway Star and Bad Motor
Right,
Scooter.
right.
And did they do My Generation too, or was that
I don't remember that. I think just
same?
Bad Motor
But
Scooter.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they didn't do any Van Halen songs, which would have been really tempting because you've got half of that lineup, but they didn't. They were really pushing. They believed in this music, and yeah, I was just so sad that it only lasted for one more album, which, in my opinion, is okay. But it's not nearly as good as the first one.
Yeah, it's like
The best batch of songs ended up on this album.
some people try to say, even Sammy says, "Oh yeah, we're making the greatest album ever with the that second Chicken Foot album, uh, because their manager died or something like
Yeah,
that, and they wanted to sort of have it be a tribute to them." And there's people that say that album is superior. I don't get it. I mean, from the
no,
moment I heard that second album, I'm like, not as good. Nope, not the energy's not there. The songwriting's not there. This has a spontaneity to it that is infectious. That song "Down the Drain" is my
yes, yeah,
favorite.
yeah. And that's one of those ones. It's like at that time, what Sammy would have been 62, and he could still pull off those screams like he does at the end of that. And I love they're doing. It's like, is that new thing, Joe? Like
Yeah,
they just
right,
kind of
right,
fall into it. Oh, it's
right.
great. It's a fantastic record. I think they made a really wise decision. Oh yeah, it was just simple enough to catch on. And it's great. Joe, was just the perfect guy to be in that band. And I mean, I always thought Chad Smith was like the most rock guy in the Chili Peppers, and he's a great drummer. He's got a very unique swing to his playing. I think having said that, I think he's the main reason it couldn't continue because obviously
Yeah,
he made more with the Chili Peppers, which is a shame. I often wonder what would have happened if they'd have had like Kenny Aronoff from the beginning. Would that be? I don't know. But yeah, it's a great record. I think the second one has some good songs on it, but not as many, and it's just
yeah,
not as consistently good. It's not as consistently uh, up and just rocking and just feel good. But yeah, that first
yeah.
album, that's a gem.
Yeah, and look, I was a huge Joe Satriani fan from the beginning. I saw him on the Surfing with the Alien tour. I didn't, I think after what's the he comes out what comes after uh Flying in a Blue Moon and
Flying in a
then
Blue Dream, then you had The
Blue Dream
Extremist.
and then The Extremist. After that, I kind of dropped off, but up until then, I love all those albums. So I was pretty psyched when I heard they were going to get together. I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, and just think about that: Ronnie Montrose, Eddie Van Halen, Joe Satriani,
Neil Sean.
Neil Sean. Briefly, yeah.
Yeah.
You chose well, Sammy, or they chose you. I don't know. It worked out great.
You don't just work with some of the best guitar players in the world if you don't have something, by the same token, it's like if you look at Richie Blackmore, look at the singers he's worked with in his career.
Yeah, yeah,
Ian Gillan, David Coverdale, Glenn Hughes, Joe Turner, Graham Bonnet, Ronnie James Dio. I mean, it's amazing.
yeah.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
so this is with Sammy and guitar players, it's the same thing. It's the interesting thing is I was always I never disliked Satriani, but I never had any of his albums. I got into his albums probably like within the last 6, 7 years. I'm a big fan now. So
Mhm.
now I can listen to those Chickenfoot albums and really hear like, oh, okay, he would have made that into a song on his own, and then the albums that are around the Chickenfoot albums that you go, I wonder if that started out life as meant for Chickenfoot because it's got a real lyrical uh, music feel to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least they proved that there was still an audience for this type of rock music. I think one of the problems it really wasn't on a record label. You know what I mean? The Chickenfoot album, like it really wasn't on an actual label. I think they pretty much put it out themselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they probably made some good bank on that if they financed it. But yeah, I know what you mean. It couldn't get the
And it's not one you see now in record stores, and it should be.
right.
It should be one of those ones that you can still go out and get.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been going for a while here, but just to top it off with Sammy's latest stuff. So I got to tell you, Tim, he kind of lost me with Space Between and even the new album. Here's the deal, man. Like Space Between to me doesn't really have very many memorable songs. I don't get the idea. I think there's no guitar solos in there. It's like, what are you doing? And with what's the latest one called
Crazy,
again?
crazy times.
Crazy Times. He brings in those goofy songs that I can't stand, and that pump it up covers.
Yeah,
I don't even like that song by Elvis Costello. Now he's got 5 songs on there or so that I really like, but I can't get behind an album that's so spotty. What's
you
your
know what?
take?
Well, I like those albums probably better than you do, but it's mostly because at least he's putting out new music because so many of these classic bands just stop. They just tour and tour and tour and put out best ofs and live albums. And so at least he was trying. But yes, I agree. He hasn't made a top to bottom 10 out of 10 album for a long, long time. And I really, I didn't care that much for that Sammy Hagar and Friends either, the one that he put out in 2013.
Yeah, no, no.
I remember when that came out thinking, man, I would have much rather had another Chickenfoot album.
There's like
Uh,
maybe 1 or 2 songs on there that are decent.
so again, I think that Sammy, as great as his career has been, and he can go out and do live shows and pick from so many different aspects of his career. I still think he works better when he's in a group, because when it's got his name on the front of it, he's going to have the final say, even if it's not the best thing, if it's not the best idea that he could go with. So yeah, I kind of agree. They're spotty, but at least I'd rather get five good new songs from him than no good new songs, or
I'm
than
with you
no new
there.
songs at
Yeah.
all. But yeah, I mean, but then you listen to the live album he put out last year, The Residency, and then you can hear he can still sing. Like he lowers the keys on songs when necessary, but you know, the guy's almost he'll be 80 next year. I mean, how many, I always think I couldn't imagine my dad doing what he does. You know what I mean? They're the
Yeah.
same age. Like I just can't imagine it. And it's just pretty remarkable that he's kept up. He's partied, but he's taken enough care of himself that
Yeah.
he didn't end up a rock and roll casualty, and he's kept his instrument, his voice, which is the first thing to go, right? I mean, it's if
Yeah.
a guitar player breaks a string, they can change their strings, and broken drumsticks. If your voice goes, it goes and it's gone.
Yeah.
And we've
Yeah,
all
I
seen
saw.
sad examples of people that are in denial about that and still do it.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. I saw him on the Best of All Worlds tour. He was fantastic. That was a great show. Loved it. But yeah, man, I hate to beat a dead horse, but man, funky feng shui. That I just don't know what he's thinking in
He's
in
got
doing
it's
that.
something
It's
that's
terrible.
yeah, he's got something in him that has to do those goofy songs. Um, I don't know what it is. I don't, he's got there are certain songwriting tropes that he goes into, and some of them I like more than others. That is not my, and the thing is, there's nothing funky about it at all. It's not, Sammy couldn't be funky if his life depended on it. You
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
But I'd rather hear that than him covering Margaritaville.
I'm with you. I'm with
But
you.
so yeah,
At the end of the
it's
day, we love him. He's
absolutely,
one of our guys.
yeah.
We'll ride or die with Sammy, no doubt. And we don't know him personally, but he seems like everyone basically says he's a really nice guy, really positive
Yeah.
energy.
And for all of that, he takes an awful lot of crap. I mean, people online, and I've gone through this having put out this book. People have this, they have the same lines they've had since 1986. He ruined Van Halen, they're a pop band, and they're this and they're that. And it's like, I can understand if you don't like the music, but what did he do to you personally? Why are you
Yeah,
so angry? There's a
yeah,
lot of anger there. Like
yeah.
I don't get the Sammy haters, and Sammy's laughing all the way to the bank. He doesn't
Yeah.
care.
It's like he writes about sex and cars a lot of times. So what?
Find me a rock, it's like, yeah, how is that need to, and I always have this argument, just so you know, Sammy did not bring keyboards into Van Halen. You ever heard Jump? You ever heard I'll Wait? Pop songs? You ever hear Dance the Night Away? And those are great songs, but just, it's just, yeah, I don't know. That's one thing where it's like, it's one thing if you don't like the music, but yeah, he gets an awful lot of, anytime I post on a Sammy fan site, it's okay. If I post on a Van Halen site, you're going to get the peanut gallery out in some form or
Interesting.
another. Yeah. It's just really, I don't get it. I haven't understood it for 40 years. And I always wonder, if the internet had been around in 1986, it would have been the same thing.
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
why it had to be versus, right? Why couldn't people just
Right.
say, look, I was like, well, I like 5150 and I like Eat 'em and Smile. I happen to like
Mhm.
5150 more, but doesn't
Mhm.
mean I don't like, you know what I mean? So it's, yeah.
Yeah, if people love that, but
But
us and
see,
them kind of thing.
well, yeah, yeah, why do you have to choose? There's more music out there to listen to.
Yeah,
I could,
I'm
I
with you.
could, I could jaw with you for hours about how much I love Fair Warning. So it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I liked a different kind of truth. I was all ready to hate it. I ended up
it's
liking it
not
a
bad. Yeah,
lot. I ended up liking it way more than I thought I would. But yeah,
yeah. So listen, folks, go out and get Tim's book, Red on Black, The Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar. He's written a bunch of other books also about the various bands, and we may have him back to talk about others of those bands. But uh, this is a great one, no doubt. And again, for redheads, come on, you got to have this, I think. And if you're the slightest bit curious of Sammy Hagar's career, get this baby. And start listening to the music, and you'll have this as a reference for pretty much, if not every song, a lot of the songs, and certainly every album. So, Tim, thank you so much for being on. Uh, we could keep going probably hours
Yeah.
and hours, but this is a good start, and we touched on some highlights of Sammy Hagar. So, thank you so much, man. And any final words from you?
Oh, I just really appreciate you having me on, John. All my books are available through Amazon, wherever part of the world you call home. Just go on your local Amazon, type in my name, Tim Derling, and as of right now, I've got 6 books out. So yeah, I appreciate all the support.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, and let's touch on your YouTube channel too. So he has a fantastic YouTube channel, very eclectic. He basically just celebrates the music that he loves, but he gets on a lot of great guests with him as well. That's called Tim's Vinyl Confessions. So head over there and see. He's always putting out new content.
Yeah, I put 3 new episodes out every weekend, and yeah, I mean the books are basically just an extension of the channel, and the channel is just an extension of the collection you see behind me. It's a way for me to talk about, the music I love, and some of it gets talked about a lot, some of it not so much. Like Sammy Hagar solo albums, I think not just the Capitol years, but I think the more recent ones people need to check out because a lot of times they're on smaller labels and you just don't see them, but they're worth seeking. Every one of them is worth seeking out. There's at least one gem on all of them, and sometimes there's a lot of gems on them.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully this video will get out there to some, to introduce new people to Sammy and also to Tim's book. So thanks a lot, Tim, and have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, John. See you
All right.
later.
Take
Once
care.
again,
Bye.
I want to thank John, and don't forget to subscribe to Living the Music. I'll have that link posted below, and my Sammy Hagar book, Red on Black, along with all of my other books, are available on Amazon. Links to those will be below as well. What do you feel are some of Sammy's career highlights? Comment below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.